edition of the Great Debate today. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, so I'm not going to do my whole spiel for this session. However, I do want to say we have our Q&A rooms and our demo rooms open. So if there's something that you've seen in the session so far today that you want to go into more depth on, we do have people waiting in those. Just click on the demos tab and you can get in some rooms there to talk with our sales team and our engineering team. They are waiting for you. So again, something special planned. You might have been able to see it on the left-hand side of your screen here, but Nate, I'm going to just toss this over to you right away here.
All right. Excellent. So hello and welcome to the 5th episode of the Great Debate. So this is a 10-part series where 2 guests debate whether a cybersecurity topic should be the top priority right now. As always, this is being recorded. There's going to be a ton of time for questions at the end. Use the Q&A functionality in Goldcast, and we'll be making a $500 donation to each of today's speaker to a charity of their choice. And here we go. So this is a very special edition of the Great Debate here at Predictability 2021. This is going to be a lot of fun, and it promises to be more informative and likely more entertaining than the other debate that's happening later tonight. I can't guarantee it, but I don't think we'll have to cut anyone's mic during this debate. So today's topic is the top cybersecurity priority in 2021, and our guests are Alan Alford and Taylor Lehman. So let me get into the bios here. So first, Alan Alford is Delivery Chief Information Security Officer at NTT Data Services, governing all security concerns for delivered IT and business services. He's got 20 plus years in IT and engineering, formerly serving as CISO at Mitel, ForcePoint, and Polycom. He has managed security strategy and led compliance with various frameworks and regulatory requirements, things like NIST, CSF, GDPR, ISO, DFARS, and others. Alan, please tell us about the charity that you're supporting.
All right. Well, I've chosen Black Girls Code, which is one of my favorite charities in terms of getting some more diversity in our workforce. Cybersecurity is notoriously not diverse. Black Girls Code is challenging that and taking that one head on. They promote STEM education and computer education for girls ages 7 to 17, African-American girls. And their whole goal is to promote and diversify our entire worker community here in security. So I'm a big fan.
All right, excellent. So thank you for joining us today, Alan. And our other guest today is Taylor Lehman. Taylor is a seasoned Chief Information Security Officer with extensive experience working in healthcare and banking. He was elected to the board of the Health Information Sharing and Analysis Center, HISAC, and has contributed substantially to the safety and security of the U.S. health system. So Taylor, please tell us about your charity.
Thanks, Nate. Along those lines, my charity was Tufts Children's Hospital, formerly known as the Floating Hospital for Children in Boston. It's one of 2 pediatric hospitals in the state. Having been an employee of Tufts and being very familiar and close to this organization, they do a lot of very, very special work, and the care they give is top notch. And it's important to me personally, given I've had my own health experiences at Tufts, that we keep these important organizations going, especially during the times we're in these days. So I'm proud to be able to have worked with this organization in the past and contribute to their mission.
All right, excellent. Thank you for joining us today. So today's topic is the top cybersecurity priority for 2021. And to give a bit of context on recent trends regarding cybersecurity investment, I'd like to hand it off to Noah Simon, who's the Director of Product Marketing here at Axonius. So Noah, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Nate, and thank you, Taylor and Alan. So this year's pandemic meant that many security programs suddenly shifted their priorities as workforces went remote. And while some projects were initially cut or put on hold, many research firms expect that security spend will still grow, albeit at a smaller rate than previously forecasted. And according to a Microsoft survey, the top 5 investments since the start of the pandemic have been multi-factor authentication, endpoint protection, anti-phishing tools, VPNs, and security awareness training platforms. Areas that have seen reductions include things like network security equipment and firewalls and identity detection and prevention systems. And while budgets have increased slightly, many companies have rolled back hiring and have to do more with less. The Microsoft survey found that 31% of companies froze hiring plans and 19% had to reduce security staff. And of course, these trends may vary depending on industry and company size, but overall, these are the macro trends that are influencing security decisions going into 2021. And with that, back to you, Nate.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Noah. All right, and now on to the great debate. So this is the format. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their opening statements on what they believe cybersecurity teams should prioritize in 2021. After opening statements, we will then go through 5 questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. We'll then have final remarks, and then we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Just use the Q&A box in Goldcast here. So I flipped a coin this morning, and that means that Taylor will go first. So Taylor, you have 2 minutes to make your opening statement on why your topic should be the top priority in cybersecurity right now.
All right. Are you going to say go or just, all right, never mind. So the top cybersecurity priority to me, we talked about COVID on a slide, just the previous slide. COVID has introduced a variety of changes in our day-to-day lives. You can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't enter facilities in certain cases without undergoing some sort of health screening. Many of us have had a test that we've had to take to basically go back to work or when we return from travel. All of this means companies and organizations who are taking this data may or may not, most don't understand that they're now collecting very personal, sensitive health information about individuals, test results, any of that typically would be covered under a law called HIPAA, which is specifically only applicable to hospitals, health plans, exchanges, basically those in the healthcare industry. Organizations like meatpacking facilities, retail stores, schools, these are not organizations that are equipped to handle health information, nor have they ever really had to. So to me, the top cybersecurity priority is training and upskilling organizations who aren't ready to handle this personal information to be able to handle the personal information, as well as treat the threats that are likely out there trying to get access to it. Because they know, and attackers take advantage of situations like this. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of it can be monetized. A lot of it can be used to do other things like extortion and other problems that people want to avoid. These organizations who are collecting it have an obligation to protect it. And I think the number one priority needs to be upskilling organizations who have yet to ever have to deal with these things to be in a position to do that, to do it and do it well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hit reset. And Alan, your time starts now.
Well, of course, Taylor's completely wrong. I just want to point out, I know it's an improper debate protocol, but obviously and clearly he's completely wrong. I was impressed with the slides that we showed earlier that talked about MFA, VPN, and some of these other technologies being on the rise, and there's a reason for that. COVID has scattered us to the 4 winds. We already saw a surge in cloud activity, SaaS activity, cloud migration. We saw a bunch of trends that were already pointing us into a very distributed workforce and distributed computing. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and sort of just mashed the accelerator on that whole mess. So I think for us, when I say for us, I mean all of us as security practitioners here. I'm not speaking necessarily for my employer. I'm speaking for me and perhaps my sheepadoodle. We are looking at a world where I think zero trust is probably our highest priority. We've got folks scattered to the 4 winds. We've got to figure out who people are. We've got to get strong identity and access management. We've got to get strong peripheral connectivity, right? SASE and other technologies like that. VPN, you can't be using split tunnel VPN anymore, right? Those days are gone. We have to distrust everyone, assume they're in the worst possible environment, and maintain and monitor and protect them and their connectivity to our environments, most of which are not our environments on-prem anymore, but cloud rather. We have to get a full control on that. So I'm going to say zero trust is our number one concern for 2021 as security practitioners.
All right, excellent. So now we will move on to the questions. And so here is the first question, which is what assumptions should cybersecurity leaders take into consideration when planning their 2021 initiatives? And I will stop sharing. And Alan, you go first, starting now.
And or becoming permanent. Assumption number 2 is that we're now going to be hiring critical roles remotely. I think a lot of companies have started to open up to the possibility that, starting with, like it used to be that critical hires always had to be at the home office. Well, with COVID-related work from home and the fact that everybody's working from home, it's becoming more palatable, the idea that you might want to hire talent that from the get-go aren't even where your home office is. So you could be based in LA and decide you're going to hire a top tier talent from Philadelphia because you want the best of the best, and that happens to be the city they live in. So off you go hiring somebody from Philly. So I think that assumption is number 1. I think the idea that this is kind of a permanent, this new normal. I hate that phrase, but the new normal is that we're scattered all over the place, and remote hiring is in place. And I also think another critical assumption is, again, the proliferation of cloud and SaaS. I think we have to assume that the on-premises environment is shrinking. At the same time, the workforce is scattering to the 4 winds. I think that's our major trend right there.
Okay. And Taylor, your 2 minutes. Start now.
I mean, I just recovered from Alan's epic destruction of what I thought was the greatest risk of all time. So thank you, Alan, for taking that one away from me. And although I'm sure you'd like to be the judge on this, we'll let the public decide. Anyway, so assumptions. So kind of along the theme of the risk that I think is number 1, we have to, organizations, I guess the way I've been saying this to people, every CISO is now a healthcare CISO. Every security leader is now a healthcare security leader. So assumption number 1 is start to think of yourself or look at your organization in that lens. What are the threat actors focused on healthcare data doing? What are the types of threats they face? The Verizon DBIR is a great source for this, but I'll tell you just to shortcut it. The threats organizations who handle health information and the risks and issues they experience are very different than banks. Mistakes are typically your number 1 source of breach, which is typically not something that other industries deal with. So you need to understand sort of how to orient your business and start to think about these data collection practices you now have to do if people are returning to work. And so planning around that is number 1. Number 2, I would agree with Alan reluctantly, just generally given the fact this is a competition and I want to win. Identity management is going to continue to be key. I think it's the underpinnings to all of the zero trust stuff for it to be effective. You need strong identity, you need strong identity hygiene, and building strength and building the muscles around maintaining strong identity and verifying identity are at the core of really the next layer of security technology coming out. And not to use a buzzword like zero trust, but identity is the new firewall, right? I guess the third thing, and you're starting to see a lot of this is just sort of coming out of Silicon Valley, is these business enablement platforms or workflow platforms like Zapier, Trade.io, codeless platforms that people are using to build workflow. In the past, you've seen workflow be sort of restricted to things like Jira and ServiceNow and SharePoint and email, and we're starting to see these automation platforms like the ones I mentioned come up in the organization, and it is the ultimate shadow IT. We're talking about lots and lots of data being used. These tools are great. Business people love them. So really need to start getting a handle and updating your asset inventories to incorporate the use of some of these codeless workflow systems. They're coming. They're everywhere now. They're in your orgs now if you don't know it, but they're coming and they're coming hot. And it's fantastic technology. So security leaders should be thinking about what is the next wave of business innovation or business workflow innovation.
Okay, so on to our second question. So as Noah mentioned earlier in the context part, economic uncertainty means that many security programs face budget cuts or smaller budgets than they had previously planned for. So what does having fewer resources mean for your selected priority that makes it even more important now? So this one, we will start with you, Taylor.
So why do fewer resources mean that your selected priority is important now? I mean, I think it goes hand in hand. Organizations have a new security burden to deal with. They're not staffed with, or they're not staffed. Most don't have the skills or knowledge of the rules or regs. Most don't have the protections in place right now to secure the way data is being collected. We're back to doing it on paper, right? When it comes to recording health information at meatpacking facilities, right? These are not strong security programs in some cases to begin with, and we're making them even harder to secure. For me, I mean, as far as limited resources go, the question is not always necessarily what I think is the hottest risk. Resources need to be applied to the business objectives, whatever they are, number one. Number two, unfortunately, sometimes things suffer that are important, but the business objectives are number one. To me, if you're in the business of having people on site working safely, you have to be thinking about safety procedures and safety protocols, but you also have to be focused on protecting the data that is ultimately generated by those practices. Not sure how I would deploy or what I would deploy. Everything is sort of business sort of specific, but employee safety has to be high on the list, and resources do need to be aligned to take on some of this new security burden. The way to deal with it, honestly, for me, it's automate as much as you possibly can safely, and establish strong hygiene practices before you take on anything too tricky or too new.
Okay. Alan, your time starts now.
I hate to agree with Taylor. I did this once back about a year ago. I agreed with Taylor, and he got a T-shirt made, and I had to hear about it for a year. But he's right about automation. He's right about automation in two senses. One is that the reduction in workforce, or less hiring, or whatever these stats are that people are talking about that are coming out, means that a lot of what the business is doing in terms of business process is automating, and it's not necessarily automating with security. Sometimes we're finding out about automation after the fact. Might be a standard scenario for a lot of CISOs. And so we have to not only automate what we can, but we have to get on top of and get in front of the automation that the business might be coming up with as well. So there's keys to both of that. And part of that success there is moving security left, getting in there as often and as quickly as possible, being a business enabler, teaching how security automation dovetails with business process automation, being there to ensure the health of a CI/CD pipeline, for example, getting in front of it and working hand in hand with the business. I think that's a really key factor to it. Another area where Taylor was, and I can't, he was RIGHT for this one moment, briefly, in this one small facet of what he was presenting. And I want to point out, most of his ideas are as bad as his fashion sense, but in this one sense, he was right again. And that's the strong identity play. Identity is super, super critical to all of this. As you get a scattered workforce, as you get a disparate workforce, as you get an automation pipeline established, you've got to establish identity not just of your people, but of your entities on the network. A strong identity access management play is crucial and key to everything. It underpins the automation we talked about. It underpins the accessing of everything from everything to everything, right? If you've got strong tools like SASE, if you've got a strong EDR solution, you got a strong security management solution, all of these things are SaaS-based. You can do all of this remotely, whether the user is connected to the mothership or not. You've got the visibility and the control you need. But at the end of the day, until you know who they are, none of that stuff is even all that useful. Who they are is the most single critical piece. So that's got to happen.
Okay. All right. So I know you both alluded to this a little bit in your previous answers here, but with this question we use on every episode, which is, as a CISO, or if you're advising a CISO, if you're given one additional headcount and $1 million to dedicate to your given priority, where would you start? And I think that's the important part here, is how to start. So would you hire additional staff, bring on new tools, or do something else? So the question is, given that additional resource and dollars, how do you begin with your given priority? So Alan, we start with you starting now.
Do I get to keep the $1 million? Because that's really going to alter my decision substantially. Because if the $1 million were able to come to me, and I could hand the one headcount the burden of managing all the security, and I could be by the poolside eating bonbons, for example, I think probably that would be my preferred number one solution. If the $1 million has to stay within the organization, it's a whole different conversation. I think investing in automation is probably my first and foremost. I would hire a couple of serious, DevOps players with a strong security bent, and task them with jumping on top of all of these issues we talked about. Get my tools rolled out, get my tools integrated, get automated pipelines and flow, get identity and access management driving the whole show. Get me automation, get me integration, and get it all fed into a single SIM with UEBA. Get me good, strong visibility of the results of everything that you're doing, and automate those flows as much as possible. I think tier 1 and tier 2 can be automated in terms of UEBA. I think a lot of the integrations, once they're performed, you no longer have to worry about the tier 1 and tier 2 work on tools rollout. A lot of that stuff can be upscaled and automated as well. So I think probably for me, it would be automation would be my core focus, and I'd probably hire more than the one. I'd probably hire 3 or 4 and just build a whole tiger team around automation and go to town.
Okay. And Taylor, you start now.
So before I get there's 2 jokes. I think I counted Alan said automation 36 times in the last minute. It's an impressive number of times to say the word automation. Originally, when I looked at this question, I said, "Oh, I'll just buy a mountain of Xanax and just start handing it out to people." That would be probably the best, and I'd hire somebody to make sure that we prescribed it correctly. I think so this is a tough one. I mean, I generally agree, without knowing anything about the company I work for in this example, automation is definitely the way I think about it. It's, for every dollar you spend, you're getting much more back for it than you would any other sort of security investment. So that's why it's sexy. It allows you to scale your resources quickly and effectively. And so definitely, just on that premise alone, it makes sense to invest in automation. So I agree with Alan. I think he knows that I agree with him more often than I don't. But I think the right answer to this question is what are the security priorities of the company you're working for, right? What are your biggest problems? And I feel like it's abusive of one's resources if you're using money to pursue a problem that doesn't directly address something that's critical to the mission of the business. If you've got I've always used this example in healthcare. You're in the business of providing healthcare. Your job as a CISO is to make strong arguments such to spend money on security so that it delivers great healthcare, right? If you work in manufacturing, you should be spending on money that makes your manufacturing safer and more productive. So whatever I'd do, whoever I'd hire would be to achieve that outcome. And in many cases, automation is the way to do it effectively and efficiently. So I agree, without knowing the context, I agree with Alan. I think that's the way to go. I think Xanax is probably not maybe a stretch. And so please take that as a joke. But I do think ultimately the right answer to this is you need to know what matters to your business, why you're in the business, and you need to put your resources where you're going to help your business grow and be productive.
Okay.
Sorry. Not the funniest answer I could get.
All right. So before I ask this question, I just want to remind people to dump your questions in the Q&A here. We will have time for audience questions at the end here, so feel free to add your questions there. So the 4th question here, a strong understanding of knowing your company's assets can help any security program. And that's what we say here at Axonius, and we mean it. But a lot of teams generally don't know what they have. And that leads me to ask, if you were dead set on prioritizing your initiative first, what are the prerequisites needed, right? So when we talk about asset management, if you're talking about an endpoint security program, you've got to know what you have to be able to add those security agents in the first place. So within your own priority, what are the prerequisites that you have to have just to get started on this initiative? So Taylor is first here, starting now.
To me, if you think about why you have an asset inventory in the first place, it's to establish accountability for the assets and who controls and makes decisions with respect to them. So to me, it's about accountability and accountability for the project, clear accountability for the assets that are there, awareness as to the value of it and the role it plays in the organization, and simple things like who to call when things go wrong. So to me, those projects are most successful when you've got a strong accountability layer wrapped around them. Anybody can just deploy technology that finds things. Ultimately, you'll find all the things, or maybe you won't, but you'll find a lot of the things. And then you're going to need to do something with it when things go wrong. You're going to need to patch it. You're going to need to do incident response on it. You're going to need to put an agent on it, right? Those are all things that, in a sense, a human needs to make a decision around. So finding the human and aligning the human to the role and ensuring that you've got good hygiene on which humans own which assets and what their roles are, that's a really important success factor that I think gets overlooked quite a bit.
Okay. And Alan, your time starts now.
So Taylor was more right than he realized. He tied something last time.
Yeah.
He said something last time. He said something this time that really tie together. And I'm gonna wrap them up in a tidy bow. He talked about aligning with the business, right? This is the single most important thing that you can possibly do as a security practitioner, as a CISO especially. You align with the business. I know a CISO who works in the clothing manufacturing world, and his answer to every question that a vendor asks him about, hey, do you want this? Do you need that? What's your priorities? Whatever. His answer is always, what's going to help me sell more jeans, right? Like this is it. You have to align with the business. So to Taylor's point, if that's happening, and now we hop over to this conversation about asset inventory, then these two have to be tied together. I want to understand for every single asset in my shop what it is, where it is, and most importantly, why it is. And why it is in the context of what is the business doing, right? Because from there, business impact analysis becomes easy. From there, attack surface and threat modeling become easy. And from there, calculating risk and prioritizing risk becomes easy. If you can identify your assets and align them with business goals and functions, it becomes so much more clear as to where the priorities need to be in terms of your security spend and your security focus. So I think those two components tie together. I think Taylor was right about both of those, and I think they dovetail nicely. And so now what do we have? Taylor said the word accountability, I think 36 times. So we've got that going, but it's also about visibility, and it's also about accessibility in the sense of how are the security folks going to get a hold of these things? If the security tools are provided, can the users still have their capabilities intact? And those conversations have to take place next. But it all starts absolutely with inventory. If you look at the CSC top 20, you look at NIST CSF, asset inventory is always number one. It's got to be there.
All right. That was exactly 2 minutes. All right. So this is the fifth and final question before we go to the closing remarks and then the audience questions. So here it is. So the title of the session was the top cybersecurity priority of 2021, but obviously you're not just going to have one thing, right? And teams need to weigh multiple priorities, not just one thing. So the final question before we hand it over is, what would be your second, third, and fourth priority areas to focus on in 2021? And that will start with Alan starting now.
Management. Actually, that's scratch that. Number two is going to be identity and access management, right? That's the linchpin upon which Zero Trust lives. Then would come remote management, strong endpoint management, strong device management, being able to, with these remote devices now that are scattered to the four winds, being able to properly manage them, keep them in the fold, keep them patched, keep them current, keep them healthy, perform health checks before they're allowed to connect in, which brings us to the next priority, which is EDR and next-gen AV, keeping strong capabilities on protecting those devices remotely. And again, tying that into health checks and capabilities, disabling and enabling what you need to remotely, which finally brings us to, we've covered, let's see, we've covered identity, we've covered secure management, we've covered secure EDR and next-gen AV. And so the last one for me would probably have to be the SASE itself, where you've now got sort of secure connectivity. And if you do that correctly, you got secure connectivity into your environment, into the various cloud and SaaS environments that you call your environment, even though they're not really yours anymore, as well as any kind of protections required for network and internet access in general. SASE works behind the scenes. It doesn't require that you be connected to the mothership. It's a fantastic addition if you simply want to control network accessibility across the board without worrying about who's where and whether they've taken time to check in lately. SASE, I think, is your final layer. And I think if you have that tech stack, if that's your vision and that's your tech stack, you've got a lock on your end devices and your servers too, frankly. Perhaps a bit of email capability and data protection after that. But you've almost got a lock on the shop just with those first four.
All right. And Taylor, your second, third, fourth, and so on priority areas for 2021.
Yeah, so I want to just sort of start out with Alan got all the questions before the session, so his answers are well practiced. I want extra points for just being asked to answer these off the cuff. So if we can just keep that in mind when the polling goes. That may or may not be true, I'm not sure, but I just thought I'd throw that out there just to see if I could screw the scores up. Second, third, fourth, fifth. So I mentioned, I guess I'll start with number one, since you didn't ask. I figured I'd answer a question you didn't ask. Number one is ensuring the people who are going to return to work can work in a site that is not only safe, but respects their privacy. So ensuring that sort of program component gets added. Some of the places where they'll look is, honestly, looking at what will be emerging privacy standards and implementing new protocols for allowing people to get into buildings in a way that respects their privacy, encrypts their data, makes sure it's kept safe, enables the management of their own medical information, which I don't know if most folks didn't catch this, but the 21st Century Cures Act released earlier this year. There's a mandate to support individual management of medical records, like taking advantage of some of those changes and enabling and using those to enable a safe workplace that respects privacy is key to me. I also think there's a lot to do with IoT in this space. So getting control of the IoT that's coming onto your network to do this work, getting control of the web portals that are now being used to collect this data. So I think WAF is going to be something also that's going to play a role, but that's the big number one. Number two is enabling the new working model. So Alan mentioned remote work from home, zero trust, other buzzes in there. I do think that those are absolutely got to be top of mind. Looking at it less about adopting new technology and looking at it more like, how are people now going to work? What are the things that we can do to increase productivity? Like just driving around today, I was wondering how I was going to do threat modeling on a whiteboard now that no one's going to be in the office. Like that's going to be a hard problem. But we need to be able to allow people to do that. So finding answers to allow people